Can Microsoft save tech? They have earnings tomorrow. We're going to find that out after a drubbing over the last couple of weeks in big tech and Fat Man Zoom. What else do we have to look forward to tomorrow for earnings as well?
Bro, Tuesday earnings is here. We're going to do an earnings preview. We're going to break down the stocks that we're excited about. You're going to do some technical analysis. And the big brunt of this is really the Microsoft. So I'm excited to get into that discussion. So here we go. Tuesday pre-market, we have Johnson & Johnson, GE, Verizon, American Express, 3M, to name a few, which is like a great start for a Tuesday pre-market. Let's start there because we have the value stocks. What stands out to you as far as those specific companies and what could potentially make moves tomorrow morning?
Yeah, really for me, I think it's Johnson & Johnson. And that's kind of been one that we've talked about that fits that bill of holding a good value stock that is undervalued from a forward PE standpoint, and they continue to just deliver. I'm really excited to hear about what some of the companies that they're going to be spinning off, and that should probably kickstart Johnson & Johnson as well, along with some of the earnings too. So that's one that I'm in particularly excited about. What about you?
Well, that you mentioned the spinoff. I was curious about that. So you think that the Johnson & Johnson splitting their business, and we've seen this from a couple companies now that are doing this. You think this actually could be a bullish factor for the stock?
Yeah, I mean, we actually, and oddly enough, GE is also reporting, and they're doing the same thing. We saw a lot of positive reaction to that. I think just the reason being is because you see a lot of these companies, they get so big, and then you kind of lose sight of what they actually do. And Johnson & Johnson's fallen into that category, and so is GE. And so I think when you separate them out and you give them, identities, I think that makes sense to a lot more investors that way. And it's kind of similar in a way of, doing stock splits. People don't really, or people know that fundamentally the company hasn't changed, but it gives a different perception of the company itself. And so I think that's what makes it more attractive. And I think that a lot of investors would respond positively to any develops moving forward with that.
Yeah, and GE has a similar storyline as it pertains to them splitting their businesses and what they focus on.
Yeah.
So certainly keep an eye on that. But I would say that for me, Verizon is really interesting. We've talked about the value stock movement. I think there's going to be a lot of information that we can glean from Verizon's earnings. And I don't think it necessarily matters how much earnings per share, revenue. I don't think that's what matters. I think what matters more so for Verizon, listen, you got a dividend aristocrat, a company that's at nearly a yield of 5%. The 5G storyline, right? Now we've rolled out the 5G. What do they tell us about that? Does that create some excitement?
Yeah.
And more importantly, I think this is a prelude to what we can get from Apple's earnings, right? Are they bullish on demand? We're hearing a lot of rumors around iPhone sales and bullishness. So is Verizon going to give us any indication? So listen, I like that Verizon as a dividend stock, as a value stock. It's in our dividend stock bot. But what I'm more excited about is, can this set the stage for Apple, which reports earnings on Thursday?
Yeah, I think that's just going to be big. And we take a look at the charts right now, and this is the Verizon chart. And I think that this has been one that's gotten beaten down after a while. There was a lot of disappointments as far as the earnings were concerned. And I think this could be the time in which we see this turn around. As you mentioned, they're dividend aristocrat. And why I think this could turn around is because we're seeing a lot of money come in and on fears of, some of the overvalued tech stocks and that sort of thing getting beaten down so much. And we're seeing this big rotation into companies like Verizon. We already talked about or saw earlier last week about how the 5G was continuing to get kicked off. And so this looks really good here on the 50-day moving average. Just today, it came down and tested that 50-day and held it really nicely. I think that, after earnings, we could potentially be watching that 54.75 area, which represents the 200-day moving average, get tested. And if it breaks above that, then we could really have some nice momentum on our hands with Verizon.
One stock that you've been bullish on, and I've been bullish on in the sector in general, which is financial services, merchant processing. American Express, we mentioned, also reports earnings. Wanted to get your thoughts and sentiments around that, because I think this is similar in a way to Verizon, because listen, it's going to talk about the overall general health and spending, but you've mentioned the reason why you're bullish on AXP, or why you like AXP, is really around what it can give us regarding travel, specifically business travel?
Travel demand is going to be insane. And I think that, in my opinion, when you look at just how much this has come down, it makes no sense for it to be here. This has been moving and kind of reacting to a lot of the high value types tech stocks, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's being drugged down with the rest of the market. The good companies are going to rise from the ashes here, and I think that American Express does do that. We should hear a lot of good guidance from them. I would be surprised if we did not from American Express tomorrow.
Does it concern you at all as you look at the chart that it's below the 50 and the 200-day?
There is some cause for concern here. I'm not going to lie about that. Today, obviously, it had a really nice move after the overall market bounced. And this right now has been moving with the overall market. And maybe earnings change that tune a little bit. We'll have to see. But this is definitely some cause for concern. I would love to see this get back up over that 200-day moving average, that 50-day moving average. We're looking at oversold levels here as well, thereabouts, getting close to it. And so we've seen some really nice moves once it does get to oversold levels. Maybe this is as low as it gets in the near future.
Now, the big dog, and I think what we're all excited about for Tuesday after hours, and that's Microsoft earnings. You know, we've been talking more about Microsoft because admittedly we've been focused on other things, but Microsoft could really, really get us moving in the right direction as far as the market's concerned. What do you think the key sort of items for Microsoft in order for you to feel like there could be some bullishness and excitement leading into the rest of the earnings of the week?
Yeah, I'm really looking at what they've been doing with their Azure side of the business. We saw 40-50% growth rates there compared to year over year, a growth on Microsoft. And so I'm expecting more of the same. I believe we're looking at somewhere around the vicinity of $50 billion in revenue year over year, which also would be really good for them. And it really, again, this has everything to do with the outlook. I think the outlook, in my opinion, is going to be really crucial, not only for this stock, but also for overall tech. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I think that this could set the tone for some of those large cap tech stocks that have kind of gotten drugged down with the rest of high value tech, because in reality, this isn't overvalued. I mean, Microsoft is trading right at 30 times next year's earnings. I mentioned on Twitter, please go follow me at Own the Chaos, that Facebook out of the FANGs is the cheapest FANG stock, valued at just 21 times next year's earnings. And that makes zero sense to me. I think it should be much higher. I think Microsoft should be too. They give us a good earnings report. I would imagine that we start to see things turn around for big cap tech, and it's worth owning, I think, all of them, to be honest with you.
So this will be a record quarter if it comes in at $50 billion.
Yeah.
Potentially most profitable quarter. I expect really strong numbers, really exciting numbers. We've talked about where they're moving. How much does gaming play into this whole story?
I think that they'll probably mention it. Obviously, with the acquisition of Activision, it has yet to go through. It probably will take about a year for that to happen. So I'm sure that they'll mention that and kind of like their viewpoint and why they plan on making this acquisition. It's going to become a much bigger part of their business because of the subscription side of things. We've heard Microsoft talk about a lot of problems with that and how they've really wanted to get up over the hump. I think Activision kind of like helps them bridge that gap. I think that that's mostly what they'll be focusing on. But at the end of the day, the Activision deal goes through. They'll be the third largest video game platform in the world, next to Tencent and Sony.
That's crazy. And hopefully we get some indications on what's happening with Microsoft, the Game Pass, and so the online gaming streaming service. So they're definitely making some moves and trying to continue to make waves. Obviously, as you mentioned, Azure is still going to win the day for them. As far as numbers, earnings per share estimates are at $2.32 a share, revenues at $50.8 billion. Needless to say, for us, we expect to beat. How much of a beat, it remains to be seen. We will be going live tomorrow or today, if you're watching this on Tuesday, at 3:45 Eastern time to give our live reaction on this earnings. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to get notified when we go live for this earnings and every other earnings this week.
That's right. And then when you take a look, just looking at the chart here real quick on Microsoft, I wanted to mention that this closed over the 200-day moving average. We had a huge spike today. If you're watching this after today's close, there was a phenomenal move. Really crazy how low this came down to 275 and then close close to 300 a share. The 200-day moving average is sitting at 292.78. If we have good earnings, I would suspect that we get back up over this resistance at 305. And I think that we could see some really nice moves out of Microsoft if we move over that hump. So pay attention to those areas. I think that'll work out for you if you do.
Is Microsoft to buy?
Yes, I own it. So of course, maybe there's some bias there. But I think it's so cheap. 30 times next year's earnings makes no sense for it to be down here, in my opinion. I don't know why it even is a question for it to be down here. Looking at our sites oversold, I think it's a solid buy no matter what.
Guys, Microsoft, Tuesday after hours. Make sure you tune in to live stream. Then we got Tesla. Then we got Apple. We got nothing but content this week regarding earnings. Hit that thumbs up, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Bye.